Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host this evening. And at the moment, it's going to be a solo show, but we'll see if any of the boys do join me. Looking at what we're going to talk about this evening, then obviously we've got all the international action from the weekend, as well as some Bunnings NPC action as well. We'll run the Moana Pasifika have continued announcing players, so we should have a quick look at that. It's not only been men's action, but we also had women's action on the international side of things, so we'll have a chat about that as well. And then head injuries have also definitely made themselves a big part of the news in this last week or so. Just cracking open a beer whilst we're talking about this on a nice orange can this evening. For those of you, let's describe for those of you who are listening rather than reviewing, I'm brewing dry hopped Pilsner. There we go. Not sponsored, but a good deal at the supermarket. So I guess let's just crack on through and look more. Nocturnal Rights Live Chat said, "Howdy, Paul. Seems a while now." Yeah, it does. I get it does, really, doesn't it? But we were here last week at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. We're here every week with the DrivingMaul show at 8 p.m. What I haven't been doing for the last week is the 5 p.m. Lockdown beers, which I was doing daily. Now, unfortunately, from a podcasting or live stream point of view, I have a new venture that I'm trying to get going called Kia Play, which is making children's toys and selling them online. So that has been taking up a lot of my time and involved a lot of driving for me around getting materials and being at my business partner's place and stuff. So as that has really been very disruptive for the past week or so. So unfortunately, sorry folks, there hasn't been that show. But look, we are here. Also had my girls at the weekend, so I didn't watch many of the games live, so I didn't do any post-match reactions. But I think this coming weekend, where we've got some cracking games coming up, we should definitely do some post-match reactions to the games, because we do have some biggies. Let's be honest, this weekend with Ireland versus New Zealand, England, Australia. 2 games for certain that really probably could do with some post-match reaction. Also, Scotland versus South Africa as well, actually. So 3 really kind of big games there that I think all could do with some post-match reaction. We probably should have done some this weekend around Australia versus Scotland versus Australia and Wales versus South Africa as well. But let's quickly go through some of the stuff from the weekend. So Ireland obviously beat Ireland did beat Japan 60-5 in that one. Look, a big win for Japan for Ireland. Really looked pretty slick, particularly in that first half. But you've also got to say, it really does feel like Japan has slipped back somewhat from where it was at the Rugby World Cup. One of those teams that seems to do pretty well when they've had a big block of training together. Argentina, another team that seems to be particularly good in that kind of way as well. And we'll get on to them in a second. But yeah, it really does feel that Japan have been impacted by this COVID side of things a lot more than some of the other countries in that one. Look, the All Blacks beat Italy 9-47. Look, not a great performance by the All Blacks, but look, let's be honest, this was a totally second string side. But then again, they did rack up 100 points against the USA with a pretty similar side. So you got to say, yeah, look, well done to the to Italy keeping the All Blacks out for that first 20 minutes. Also, the All Blacks were, I say, disjointed. A lot of changes from last weekend. I wouldn't take much from this game when looking forward to the next 2 games, in all honesty, folks. We're looking at another 17 or so changes looking forwards on that one. We should also actually, sorry, I need to wind back a bit to Ireland versus Japan. And look, at the beginning of that game, we had a pitch invader, didn't we? Yes, Java, or whatever his name is, that guy came on in his Japanese kit. Look, it's not funny anymore. As we saw, as we'll talk about later in another game, pitch invaders are a real problem. And look, he really needs to be getting some serious bans and fines to stop this kind of stuff. It doesn't help when you've got some of the laddish podcasts having him on saying, "Oh, how funny you are." No, it's not funny anymore. It might have been funny initially when did it against for the in the cricket for the first time, but look, it really is beyond a joke now, and move on and stop it. It's really not a good move at all. So that's what I'm going to say about him. You won't be seeing me sort of giving him any airtime on Twitter or that kind of stuff, because I think it's just bad on that one. Fiji, look, got a good win over Spain, 13-43. Clearly more difficult games to come, with Wales up next weekend. But look, a good morale boosting win. Good to see. It's good for them to get that run out to clear some of the cobwebs and to have a preparation game ahead of Tier 1 games, which they rarely get. So I think perhaps one of the better tours being lined up for Fiji, even if unfortunately, obviously, they don't have their full setup because the coaches haven't travelled, and so it's a makeshift coaching team, and also there are none of the Southern Hemisphere based players involved, so only European based players. So one of those ones say, look, good start for them. Portugal beat Canada 20-17. Now, I put out the tweet saying that I think that this showed how far Canada had dropped. And people say, look, Paul, it's not a shock. And I agree, this isn't a shock. I backed Portugal to win by 3, and they did. Yes, but this does show Canada, the team that has been at every single Rugby World Cup so far. They've obviously not, they've failed to qualify for the next one in 2023, but they have been at every single World Cup so far. Portugal have only been to 1 Rugby World Cup. To give you the kind of, yes, they're both Tier 2 nations, but to give you an idea as to the different kind of levels within Tier 2, this is one that Canada in the past would have expected to win, but they really have slipped back. Portugal heading in the right direction. It's good to see teams like Portugal, like Spain, who are in that second tier of European competitions, along with Georgia, Romania, etc., getting games in this window, and getting games where they can be competitive, where they can actually learn something from it, rather than just getting an absolute drubbing against Tier 2 ones. But Simon lets me know that Portugal scored in the last minute. He has, I'll be honest, will have seen a lot more rugby than I have over this last weekend. So well done to Portugal. As I say, up and coming. Canada, to me, look in some real trouble. They did say at the last Rugby World Cup, the last Rugby World Cup cycle, they didn't make Japan, that their loss of World Rugby funding could mean that they would go under. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to Canadian rugby over the next 4 or so years, as they might miss out, or they probably will get less World Rugby funding because of their lower status and having not made the Rugby World Cup. England beat Tonga. No big surprise there. 69-3. Look, well done, Tonga, turning up. They always turn up and are there for these games. So great to see them doing that. Again, I'm honest, I've not watched this one, so I'm not sure what we kind of really learn from this one. That's a good hit out for England ahead of harder games coming up for them. Look, Tonga, keep turning up, and let's hope that they get more recognition for doing this, for keeping on turning up, because it's we do obviously need teams to play at the end of the day, and they could very easily have pulled out of this Northern Hemisphere tour, especially with Farrell having a positive COVID test. Now, it turned out to be a false positive, and he is back and available for the for England for the rest of the series. But look, COVID is still a very present thing in Europe. Yes, we are seeing full stadiums, but there are also a lot of people with COVID, a lot of people dying with COVID still over there. So you've got to say that that would be I wouldn't be surprised if Farrell is the last, if Farrell isn't the last person to have to drop out with COVID. Actually, one of the Welsh players as well, didn't he? I think so. Look, so a couple of players who have done. Let's just hope no one gets it seriously, like we saw with Georgia in South Africa during the mid-year touring window. So with that one, narrow win for South Africa over Wales in that one, which look a really good turnaround for Wales with this one. Yes, they got a couple of players back, such as bigger Lewis Rees-Zammit, but they lost Alwyn Jones as well to injury. So I don't think you can put this down to a couple of extra players back from England. I think this is Wales. Look, historically, they have started these November windows and Six Nations slowly, but that, obviously that was under Gatland rather than under Pivac. But look, good turnaround from Wales. Really stepped up their level in that one, and up against the world champions will be obviously not happy that they lost in this one, 18-23. But look, at least they're much more competitive and say heading in the right direction for Wales with that one. As was mentioned further up in the chat by Nocturnal Rights, France versus Argentina was a good game, and look, the Pumas played a lot better in this one because you've which is good to see, because obviously they didn't have they had an abysmal rugby championship, losing all 6 games, not even picking up a losing bonus point. So look, had a really poor rugby championship. So looking a bit better against France, which was good to see. It's been a long old haul for the Los Pumas, and even though some of them did have to go back and play club rugby between the rugby championship and these games as well, so it's not like they've had full perfect preparation heading into this one. But good to see them being much more competitive in that one. But I think France always looks the better team, but Argentina hanging on in there in that one. Finally, on Monday night in the early hours, we had Scotland versus Australia. Half-time, only 7-3 in that one, with Alatoa getting a yellow card in this one. So not a high-scoring affair by any stretch of the imagination. But look, Australia did get back in front just after half-time, but Scotland got back in front again and kept their and saw themselves through with a Russell penalty at the end there. A close one, obviously, in that one. So, well done to Scotland in that win over Australia. That's a massive morale boost for them. Let's remember Australia on a 5-game winning streak coming into this one after all of that. After some good games against South Africa in there, obviously 2 wins over Georgia, and also that win over France as well. So looking at Nocturnal Rights, we had injury and unavailability, a bit of an have hit the Aussies a little in this one. Yes, and I think that's what we've got to actually be aware of here is how much this Australian team or how disrupted this Australian team was coming into this game. You've got Arnold and Skelton coming in, and clearly they've had about a week preparation with the team in there. James O'Connor at 10, he's been injured for the rest of the international season, so he's not played since what, June, July's time, or June, I think it was, in Super Rugby. So again, little or no preparation coming into this one. Karevi was in at 12. He's also gone from there. They've lost Hodge as well as Banks, they're two fullbacks, so they've both gone. So a lot of this continuity that Dave Rennie was building up in this team has kind of disappeared ahead of this game. Also, Karevi on the wing, another person to be missing out as well. So quite a lot of changes in this team compared to that went through the Rugby Championship and did so well in those the final 4 games there. And you've got so it is that so you're quite right. A lot of changes there. Karevi is a major loss, he is, but I think also that fact of having Arnold and Skelton back, 2 quality players, true, but they just don't know the systems. They've not been part of the Australian setup for a long time now, particularly Skelton. So it doesn't matter. So things like lineouts and stuff would have been cobbled together at the last minute. So it's actually quite a disrupted team, or probably the most disrupted Australian team we've seen for this year at least, going into this game. So it probably should bear that in mind with that result. But still, good for Scotland to get that win there over Australia. Looking forward then to this coming weekend's games. We've got Belgium versus Canada. So another good game for Belgium there. Again, they're in that second tier of European teams up against Canada. Scotland take on South Africa, which would be a cracking one. That's at 2 a.m. On Sunday morning in New Zealand time. As I haven't got my daughters this weekend, I will be trying to get up for that one. That's going to be good. At the same time, Italy versus Argentina. In that one that I'm less interested in, let's be honest. You'd expect Argentina to pick up that win. At 4 o'clock, we've got the French Barbarians taking on Tonga. Doesn't look like that's on Sky here in New Zealand. But look, that after a couple of real tough games for Tonga, that'll be a much better game for them there, I think. Ireland then against New Zealand, 4:15 a.m. New Zealand time. That should be a cracking game, and definitely looking forward to that one. As Con comes and joins me. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, Paul. Very good. I've been listening along, so while I've been cooking, and sorry I'm late, but I thought you might need a little bit of company.
I could, yes.
All the games live,
and you've probably seen more rugby than I have at the weekend. To be honest, I was catching up on highlights today as I was cleaning bits of stables.
Bits of stables. Well, sounds like dirty work, but look, I was away for a sort of a golf trip with mates on the weekend, so I missed a few, but I did catch some of the games, and this is, I do love my as you can probably tell, I like my international rugby, and I do love the autumn internationals, and so obviously the All Blacks game wasn't anything to get too excited about, but it was a good start. I don't think the USA game was really the start. It was kind of not even really an appetizer, but it was pretty good.
Well, we had the USA, then Wales, and now Italy. So 3 games.
True. The Wales one was Sounds ridiculous. Actually, it almost slipped my mind because what the Wales game was one of the only games last week. Whereas it's great to have those sort of 4 or 5, tests. It's that one was also, not the greatest game, but Wales certainly fronted up this week and were probably a little bit unlucky not to take it.
Yeah, I'd say a great turnaround, really good turnaround for them after that one, which is what they need as well. Sometimes I think it's ridiculous. Top 14 in the Premiership played matches last weekend. Yep, they do during the international windows and the English and the French competitions. And look, they're going to carry on doing so until we get a global season that's agreed that separates the year into club and non-club and international rugby, like we have.
Although, Simon,
from the Southern Hemisphere point of view.
Sorry, excuse me, Paul. Although you do get the benefit of because of the way the Premiership works, they and the fact that it, if you look at the New Zealand equivalent, we've got the Super Rugby, but we always talk about how important NPC is for having players that aren't in the international teams have something to do. and the Premiership season's obviously really long. So I kind of, there's part of me that kind of likes the concept of, the NRL has, not that I'm a big NRL fan, to be fair, but they obviously have periods of the year where some of the best players will be out, and the teams have to try and have a little bit of the depth to accommodate it. And I guess it's the same with these teams. It's a test of what depth they have, and sometimes I guess the less stacked teams with internationals get up. But I guess if the Premiership only, in Paul, you'd know a bit more about this than me, but if the Premiership only played outside of the international window. And considering how long the international window is, the UK has quite a lot. You've got Six Nations.
The Premiership has always overlapped in the windows. Now, they haven't played every weekend, but they have had things like, we had the Anglo Welsh Cup in there, or the Amlin Cup for a while, and then they had a Premiership Cup, which was designed for the sort of second string players. So they have tried various things in the past, but as I say, until you get a better what do you ever call it?
Global window.
Global season put in place. It's still going to happen. Simon's corrections corner. Simon's correcting me that Belgium in third division, not the second division of European rugby. Thank you for that one. So if Canada lose that game, then it really is bad for them. But anyway, moving on to the other games then. Portugal versus Japan. So obviously Portugal, after that win over Canada, up against Japan. Obviously, you'd expect this is one you'd expect Japan to win, but I think it's a great test for Portugal to see where they are against one of the top or the top tier 2 team. And then at 6:30 in the morning, England versus Australia will be a cracking one. England have had that warm-up game against Tonga. Australia, as I was saying, that's much disrupted team into this series of games. So it'll be interesting to see how they gel heading into that one.
They were pretty unlucky on the weekend. Did you catch the game? I did hear you speak about it before, but was that one you caught the highlights of?
That's what I caught the highlights of, yeah.
And what did you think of the? What did you think of the card?
I think I did a good highlights today. Actually, no, I don't. No, I think I missed the highlights of that one. Sorry, today.
Okay, so I'll give you the play now. Someone on the chat can tell me I'm full and I'm blind, because I probably am, because I am, to be fair. But the card was Michael Hooper had scored a try, and Alatoa, what is it? The correct pronunciation, Paul?
Yep.
Pronunciation. Can't even say that. So he came down, I guess, into the breakdown, into the ruck, and I saw him planting his arm on the ground for stability. Now, he might not have been doing that, but he made the contact that he made with a player was probably with his arm hairs. It was very, very light touch. Now, I saw it in the highlights, so it was very fast, so I didn't see 6 different angles. And I actually watched part of the game, but I missed that part, and so I had to rewatch the highlights. And it looked to me from that it was a pretty tough call, and I'd be pretty upset if I was an Australian fan from what I saw.
Actually, I did see the highlights. But now you mentioned that instance, yes, I did see it. Look, in a week where Carl Heyman has come out and said he is joining the litigation against unions in Europe because he's got early onset dementia and he's younger than me. When we've had Dane Helmet-Petty retire from the game at the age of 30, and let's be honest, he's hardly played for the last 2 years, it feels like. So he's effectively retiring at the age of like 28 there through concussion symptoms or head injury symptoms. We do have to protect the player's head. Having said that, you're right. He probably just caught the guy's chin. To say it was a swinging arm, I think was incredibly harsh. What's the difference between if you're supposed to bind when you go into a ruck, then your arm's going to be swinging to a certain degree, and this wasn't swinging into someone's face deliberately. This one was so. Yes, I get that it was probably as close as it could be. But at the end of the day, if you're going to make contact with the head, with so much of this going on, whilst the Southern Hemisphere referees have looked to come up with as many excuses as possible not to give cards, the European referees have been trying to have been actually enforcing these cards and giving it out. So it's one of the things that we said with Boa and Stephen earlier in the year was, look, when we come to this part of the year, we're going to see a bunch of cards for Southern Hemisphere players, and they're going to go, what's going on? Well, sorry folks, but this is referees applying the laws as World Rugby want it to be done, not as a union that's concerned about TV figures, wants things to be done. I'm afraid.
Fair call. And I think you don't hate the ref, hate the law potentially. And I am someone that fundamentally I do agree with the direction that they're going. I think sometimes you still need to have a level of, I guess, pragmatism, particularly when there's no intent. Now that's a little bit different for something like someone sprinting at someone going for a shoulder charge and just clipping the shoulder on the way to the chin. That's different. Like we've seen with a couple of cards or yellow cards or near yellow cards or red cards, like Kurajani earlier in the season. I think something where you have no intent's a dangerous word in rugby now. It's a loaded word, but I think something where you are carded for what is you didn't have control over what was happening, or it was a complete and utter accident. Is difficult. Like the part that I have the most difficulty with, Paul, is when the tackled player is dipping down, below the waist and then going into a tackle, and a tackler has a shot, ends up hitting them with their shoulder or their arm and hit them high. And you see cards for that. I have a lot of trouble with that, because I think most people know that there is a point where you can't drop any further, and you can't drop out. It's not as if you can lift your arm or drop down or slide under the ground. And I think I would say that World Rugby has probably been partially vindicated for their efforts around the high ball, because people are treating it differently as a result of what they're doing. Still, you get some calls that are tough, and maybe I think the Geordie one with a leg, I can't even remember what the outcome of that was, but those types of things can be a little bit, you can find yourself feeling like they were a little bit hard done by. But I think they do need to do something about the dipping player, because it could be used as a bit of a weapon. If you get it, if you're able to, I guess, obtain a card by dipping as low as you can, people start to use it. It's my piece.
Yeah, look,
it's my rant.
So I guess in response to your rant, I think Geordie was entirely right to be carded, and shouldn't have been let off in the judiciary hearing afterwards. What they said was he overbalanced and therefore he was doing it to balance himself. Well, yes, he did. But if you jump and you get your technique wrong, and your technique means there's a foot being put up in head height, that's your fault for getting your technique wrong. I'm not saying he deliberately kicked the person in the face, but I am saying that it's his reason. It's his fault for the foot being where it was, because he jumped wrong and over rotated. So yes, on that one, I think the Alan Alato one is different to what you're talking about there about tackling one. Is he was clearing out a ruck. Now, one of the problems with the ruck nowadays is that nobody keeps their feet. Let's point out, so everything is happening at about 6 to 12 inches off the ground. So there's very little of anything to actually hit to clear out. So to me, the whole ruck is a mess, and players need to be kept on their feet a lot more and get told to go over the ball rather than on top of it. But that's another discussion for another time. And if we're talking about dipping, I mean, it was Ofatonga Fasi's one that we're talking about there, where Yep, he didn't wrap the arm. So for me, for that one, again, he didn't wrap the arm, so it should be a card. But because the player was going basically head first into him, then that's affected the player's fault. You can't, if your head's below your shoulders, then there's you probably shouldn't be allowed to run into a tackle with your head below your shoulders, basically.
Yeah, or kind of below your waist, almost as if your head's sort of, if you're basically on a 90-degree angle, there's a good chance that because you're bending quite quickly. I think we all know that if you have, well, I think most people would agree that at the full pace of the game, if you couldn't possibly avoid grabbing them high, it probably shouldn't be anything. I mean, I think where they've gotten to is they've gone, if you touch them in the head, it's a penalty regardless of the situation. Now, you were lucky that you didn't get a card. I find that a bit difficult, but the same with players jumping into tackles and things like that. Like that kind of thing can be frustrating. Now I know that that's sort of changed a little bit, but anyway, it's I should say I sound like a whingy sort of Southern Hemisphere person. I'm actually, usually I understand the World Rugby's intent and kind of they have to do it. They have to do something. It's just I think there's a little bit more nuance and pragmatism that needs to be added.
These guys train 38 hours a week or 30 odd hours a week, so they need to get it right. And too often we've got I remember that I've gone Nigel Owens saying how he got hoodwinked by James Haskell once. Went, "Oh, sorry, I was accidentally there. I didn't mean to be there." And he's like, "No, he meant to be there. He wasn't accidentally there, and I should have carded him, but I only penalised him." He pulled the wool over my eyes that once, and so I didn't let that happen again. These players are intentionally in these positions. That's how they train, and they need to train to be in a different place at the end of the day for a lot of this stuff. So the England-Australia game at 6:30. Then on Sunday morning, moving on then to Monday, France versus Georgia at 2 a.m. Good to see Georgia getting a Tier 1 game, but let's be honest, I'm not sure that any of us will be getting up and expecting much from that game. And at 4:15 on Monday morning, Wales versus Fiji. So another one that's probably a highlights rather than a get up for in that one. We'll see with so it'd be good to see how Fiji go. I think it's good that they've had that warm-up game ahead of this game in this one. Dr. Wright's problem is if teams do not push it, they will lose badly. I guess this comes down to this is where we come. This is where we have a problem, which is where we get where we have laws in the game, and then when the referees actually strictly enforce them, they all go, "Oh, but he's blowing the whistle every 2 seconds." So he should let the game flow. Well, if you let the game flow, then people start cheating, and because they know they can get away with it if it's not interfering or significantly interfering with play. Air quotes there for those of you on the podcast. To me, I wish the referees would blow everything, and I think players would become a lot cleaner, a lot quicker. Very quickly, over about 2 or 3 weeks, it would all change. But unfortunately, the uproar in those 2 or 3 weeks would probably kill that directive. Unfortunately,
I'm not sure if it would have in that quick fall. I think with the change between domestic, top tier, international, I think people, can you recall something interesting happened in the 2019 World Cup where they were very harsh in the pools of the World Cup. There was average of sort of 3 cards a game or something like that. Average of 3 yellow cards a game. I could be talking shit there, but it was very, very high. And then maybe there was backlash, but then the quarterfinals came around, and there was almost no cards for the rest of the bloody World Cup. Now, was that people adapted? You might say that. So I think it was that they toned it back a bit. They'd made a point, and they'd toned it back a bit. But I'd probably like to. Someone's probably written an article. Maybe you've written an article, Paul. I'd like to actually go back and see what that was, because your argument could be sound that maybe that those pulls force people to change their ways. Argentina were, got a couple of tough calls and actually lost against France, and which ended their World Cup. Where they could have won that game against France. And then I think a lot of teams started to, they were worried. There was a lot of articles, there was a lot of noise about it. But I felt at the time that they toned it back for the quarterfinals. Yeah.
Yeah, they probably did. I think it's the wrong time to be trying to change people's behaviour. Is at the pinnacle, at the big event. By then, you've done all your training, right? So you're not going to change behaviour. Coaches aren't going to are going to want to have had the behaviours that they want instilled by then. So trying to change behaviours on the fly during the preeminent tournament isn't the best time to do it. But anyway, it is kind of what it is, it's never going to change. But what I think one problem that we do definitely have in rugby at the moment is that there seems to be more talk about referees after the game than there is about the rugby that's being played in quite a lot of cases. So that's a problem. And when we've got South Africa, for example, this weekend having videos up saying, this disallowed try shouldn't have been disallowed. You look at the video and go, well, yes, it should. Your video that you're complaining about the referee actually proves the fact that it was the correct call. But that doesn't feed into the South African, the Springbok narrative at the moment, which is the world's against us. It's all being the authorities don't want us to win, which is the narrative that is there at the moment.
I think that you're right. I don't want to slag off our South African listeners. Sorry, but there is a certain kind of QAnon and a certain level of discourse online. The circle, freeze frame circle, 3 red circles on a still is something you keep seeing. And I think it's gone from the days of people blowing up due to a difficult red card or a couple of difficult yellow cards that really do affect a game, like we saw in the Scotland-Australia game, a controversial single, to blowing up over a breakdown call. Over a penalty that in the beginning of the game, because they thought that a player. What I find interesting is, that a lot of the calls that I've seen in some of these videos were, Boa, here he is.
Better late than never, gentlemen.
Good evening, Boa. You've moved from the big sound system back into the garage.
Into the gym.
So a studio move.
Yeah, I have. Unfortunately, just was running an online course with some of the coaches, so I need a bit of space. I hope everyone is well, and I hope everyone is safe.
Thanks, Bo.
I totally agree. Yes, thank you, Bo. I've not actually mentioned that. Yeah, I hope do hope everyone is safe during these tough times. Talking about referees is my least favourite thing about rugby. Absolutely, and
has increased. You're right, Paul. Just to fret that.
We'll just move on from that now that Bo has joined us.
Well, if I can get a word in, look, there is a genuine effort to improve this. And I've got nothing but admiration for referees, particularly the community level. The problem is in test level, given the amount of scrutiny, and let's think about it this way, guys. I mean, in a professional league, if a player or group of players have a really bad game, I guarantee you next game they'll probably get the chop or get dropped. But for some reason, when it comes to officials, the same level of scrutiny doesn't apply, and we've seen some horrendous errors. Now, I know no one actually goes out there to commit these errors, but there's a significant amount of time and resources applied by World Rugby to develop and train these referees. The most frustrating part, and the wider rugby community, particularly its fans, is that these errors keep committing. There's a repetition, and there's no end to it. And we did see some, pretty bad howlers over the weekend. So we just have to wait and see, because we have a number of some of the more seasoned pros leaving, And there are some really good referees knocking on the door, particularly at first-class level, right around the world. So let's just hope for the best and see what comes end of the line.
It is just to comment on that. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, go on. I was going to take it a different direction. Go on.
Just continuing to talk about your favourite topic, Paul. I mean, just on that, Paul, I've seen over the years the really big calls that have tremendous effect on a game, and I'm thinking the 2015 World Cup quarterfinal, Scotland Australia, that offside that wasn't offside, or the 2017 final. Slightly biased here, but 2017 final Lions game. Really tough call. I think you know that the ref, regardless of the fact that World Rugby is silent, you know that the ref probably cops a lot of heat. The problem is that no one says anything. But on the other hand, I wonder what could say if World Rugby comes out. If World Rugby, sometimes they do come out, but they don't come out on Monday or Sunday night and go, "We screwed up. Whoops, Scotland should have won. They should be in the semi, but hey, that's what it is." Because they almost need to let the fans sort of cool down.
Let's rewind now, because the Lions one they didn't, and yeah, I get that one. To me, the Scotland Australia one in real time, it's I have no problem with this call. It's very, very difficult to spot. It's only when you start doing slow-mo and TMOs that you actually spot the offside in that one. To me, it's a very tight one. Now they did throw Joubert, wasn't it, Boa? Is that right? Yeah, Craig Joubert.
And he kept it straight after. He kept it straight after, and that added real fuel to the fire.
That did. But he got thrown under the bus by World Rugby afterwards. They went and said they came out on that one and said he got that wrong.
Well, he got a promotion after that.
Well,
he got promoted
media,
upstairs to the desk. But I guess that is, to me, what they do there when they have at times said, "Look, it was an error," and people and referees will make errors. I think that's about, that's what they should do. How much further could they really go? You know what I mean? Because
I think the problem is we know there's a process that happens, right? But we don't get told what that process is. Now, if someone actually would explain that what the process is, then we would actually some of us commentators would actually know. Some pundits would actually know what it was. But anyway, I want to move off this one because we'll just go round and round in circles. We're talking about games from 2000 or 1905.
What about the 2007? No, I'm just kidding. Keep going.
Move on. I started on that.
No, we'll go back to 2003 in the second half of the World Cup final, where not one single scrum penalty went England's way, yet England was the dominant scrum. But anyway, the Nocturne Right says positive ref story was the one for the Northland Hawke's Bay game. Forgot her name. Sorry, her name is Tiana Nwati, and I've probably pronounced it wrong. And she gave a yellow card as well, so good on her on that one. Talking of females in rugby, let's move on to the Blackferns. Oh, did you like that segue? Oh, beautiful, well done, smooth.
Paul. You should be on TV One News, mate.
So let's run through the women's results from the weekend. We had the USA losing to Canada 13-26. So the Canada getting the double over the USA there. France, unsurprisingly, beating South Africa 46-3 in that one. South Africa South Africa decided not to send their women to the Olympics, even though they qualified because they didn't think they would get a medal. So real show on that one. Wales women beat Japan 23-5. That's a good result for Wales, obviously. And Wales get more games, but they are amateur. They are about to start getting contracted, but not on a huge amount of money. Going forwards. And then that England versus New Zealand result, 56-15, a 2 weeks on the trot where there's been record defeats for the Black Ferns in this one.
Tough one.
And I think a real show that that England with the premiers, not the premiers, I've forgotten what it's called now, the Premier 15s, and France with their women's league, where they've got full season-long professional leagues, have really taken women's rugby to another level, haven't they, Bo?
Oh, no question. And look, first of all, congratulations to the England women. It was wow, it was absolute toweling. I did expect the English women to win, but not to that extent. And I have to say, the Ferns were lucky. The score could have easily been 70, 80 points. This English women's side was that good. And for me, the moment of the match was that young English winger smoking Portia Woodman. Wow, I never ever thought I would see that day, but it happened. And of course, it's a reflection on what you call run on form. The form line has been terrific for this English women. And they're fully open to the advent of professionalism. And to me, it very much looked at a haphazard Farah Palmer combined 15 against a well-drilled, thoroughly coached, and most importantly, tactically very accurate English women's side. So for the Ferns, back to the drawing board, it's probably a good thing the World Cup has been postponed by a year, because had it been this year, boy, we would have been in some serious trouble. But it's not all bad news. Sometimes you learn more from your defeats, and once you cop a 50-point hiding, this would have really hurt the girls' pride. So hopefully they'll learn more from this. And for me, the real alarming factor was we got completely out-muscled in the physicality department. That said, we did have a number of young players being blooded, so the heat will be on the girls to deliver. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think the DrivingMaul, just obliterated them. Like they got, I think it was four tries, maybe 5 tries or something like that from the DrivingMaul, and it was just 4 tries. Yeah, it was just, you could see that the Black Ferns were. Once they got, I think it was 3 tries in 15 minutes or something like that. I might be mixing up the games, but they were a little bit down. The yellow card was also pretty tough, as in it might have been tough to be a yellow penalty try. Close one. The Kendra Cox was a bit confused, but that might be some good acting. But they really needed, and they just obviously. So week 1, DrivingMaul played a big part. Week 2 played an even bigger part. They obviously would have tried to practice defending it. They would have known it was coming, and they just couldn't stop it. And that is a bit of a worry. So, if they've got any hope of giving them trouble in the world, all the other teams in the women's teams in World Rugby will be looking at that and going, we have to be able to defend against it, because it was just a surefire try. They got down there. They could get, if they got the line out, and they did trouble the Black Ferns line out a little bit. They could if they got a maul, they could just push it over. If they got a penalty, go ahead, Bar.
Yeah, with a player like Kendra Coxedge, who I rate as one of the most intelligent players in world rugby, both in men's and women's, you really have to utilize the tactical kicking out of hand, making sure you play in the right part of the field. Trying to play this whole run at all cost game, to me, makes very little sense. And against a very, very accurate English side, you make an error, you make an unforced error. All you're doing is giving them opportunity. And in this instance, 4 to 5 opportunities where they pinged it into the corner, set up a DrivingMaul, beautiful fishtail. We had no answer. We were a bit lost when it came on how to defend the maul. It would have been a lot easier had the Ferns decided to have a no contest maul and actually go around and look to play the ball. But they didn't do that. They're very upright. So, it just showed a lot of flaws in the planning side of it. And at times they looked a little bit shell-shocked, almost like a fish out of water.
Yeah. And just to ask a question, this is pure speculation, pure con speculation, but it doesn't seem like England have put as much emphasis on sevens as New Zealand has. It's a big deal, and for us, and we obviously won the gold, so brilliant, and so it paid off, and that's probably what a lot of these players have spent a lot of their time doing this year. Has that played a part in what's happened in these two games?
I think, look, clearly New Zealand do have prioritised the sevens over 15s. We've seen some of the sort of things happen in Canada and the USA. But at the end of the day, the amount of effort that goes into this one, I mean, Science England have a women's premiership and play the women's Six Nations, right? The Black Ferns do not have an annual competition, full stop. So England are guaranteed five internationals a year straight away with the Six Nations. Now, the Black Ferns are not guaranteed any games a year. There is no, they try and organise games against Wallaroos. They try and put together a November tour. They occasionally get some teams, European teams, come over during mid-year, but there's no guarantee. And Simon says then also that hopefully that Pacific Four will help to close that gap. Super Rugby here though is going to be 4 games, right? The women's premiership. Well, the England women are playing 20 professional games between now and the Rugby World Cup next year. Our girls will play 4 in that time. So, look, whilst Super Rugby, Aupaki, I've gone blank to the name now. Aupaki is right. Is a step forward. It is a very small step forward, and there is a long, long way to go for it to be anything like the Premier 15s that is happening over in England. Look, the English team, were the better side, and these are some of the reasons behind it on this one.
It'll give them a shake-up, though. It'll give the New Zealand team, New Zealand Rugby, it's record losses, World Cup's coming. It might be a good thing. If this test didn't go ahead for COVID reasons or something like that, the battering would have come in a year and a bit's time. So it might be a good thing for them.
Yeah, I think it's one of the silver linings. And you're right, Paul. I think the quantum and the volume of Super Rugby Aupaki is probably on the lighter side. Maybe they need to have another round because the talent pool, the size of the talent pool is probably bang on. But given that particularly the English women, they play, I think, it's something like 18 or 22, somewhere in the middle, the amount of games. So that's a high volume of high performance footy. So this is going to be a bit of a concern. We do have a very good high performance program, both for men and women in the 15s and 7s, quite well defined, but nothing replaces the ability to get run on game time, sheer minutes under your belt. And I think that's what is going to hurt the Ferns going forward, unless, of course, we see some tinkering with this Super Rugby Aupaki.
Yeah, look, and you could, remember the 15s competition, the Premier 15s in England. There are about half the USA team, or perhaps slightly less than that, internationals play in that. All the Welsh girls, or a lot of the Welsh girls play in that. A lot of the some of the Scottish girls, some of the Irish girls do as well. So there's a lot of players. So it's not just the English international players in there. It's all the other ones. It's these other countries as well. Whereas here it's just going to be the key. I think there's one maybe Australian player who's signed up for it from memory. I remember seeing. But on the whole, it's going to be just one international team in there rather than the 4 or 5 international teams that are all in that Premier 15s. I just think simple things to do. It comes down to money at the end of the day, right? They basically have said we can't afford. We're not willing to put the money into it that will allow a full season's worth of rugby, or for the women at professional level. But simple things like Australia have had Super W for 4 or 5 years now. So why don't we have a final between the winner of Super W and the winner of Super Rugby Aupaki? One game, that's not going to cost a lot of money, and it's a step towards that Trans-Tasman rivalry and getting that going. Would the Kiwi side win? Probably. I mean, as we've seen between the Black Ferns and the Wallaroos in recent years, but it's another game. It's a bit more preparation. It's a final, which you kind of that kind of intensity or of scrutiny ahead of the game, etc. This kind of stuff you need to get practice of as well.
The other side of it is the direction that this is heading. It's concerning, and I'm gonna. The reason why I say that is that the support was excellent for the English for the women's game. If you saw, the stadium they weren't using Twickenham, they were at a different stadium, and I thought the crowd was great. We don't tend to get those types of crowds here for the Black Ferns. Now, maybe when England come, it is a better crowd, but 2 games really, really well supported. That's money. That translates to more support, more games. The commercials go up, more money. That's what they need, and I think we haven't hit that yet with getting the level of local support for the Black Ferns that we need.
But also, okay, where do they try and play those games, and compared to how New Zealand Rugby try to play the Black Ferns games? So, where those games have been played, they've been played at Sandy Park in Exeter with a ground capacity of around 12,000, and at Northampton Saints Ground again, similar capacity around about 12,000 or so, right? Whereas, what does New Zealand Rugby try and do with Black Ferns? Oh, we try and make as a double header at Eden Park and try and get 45,000 people to turn up early for 2 hours early for a game. Sorry, no, that's not going to work. And so if you want to try and do it, you've got to take it out to Hawke's Bay, take it down down to Tasman. Tasman were hoping to have a Black Ferns versus England the other year. But that didn't go ahead. So look, we need to take it out to these places and stop trying to put it in the big stadiums. If you're going to have it in Auckland, play in an Albany stadium. Don't play it at.
No, that's probably what I think. Exactly. A small stadium, because it doesn't look attractive when you've got you can't tell how many people there are, but it's majority empty. There might be 3,000, 4,000 people there. Unfortunately it's a little bit of a turn off, and it's a real shame because they are trying. They want the crowds there, and I think I understand the logic with having the pre-match, because it's a bit of a sample. They're trying to give a bit of a sample. People come along, they might catch the second half and go, "Oh, this is fucking great rugby." And that's the thing. The match on Sunday morning was excellent. Like, the quality of the rugby is really, really good. So I think most of the fans that might have tuned in, having a bit of English fans having a bit of patriotism there, as that's what does get a lot of us to watch some games, would have thought that it was very impressive rugby, and will be tuning in to the next ones if they haven't seen it before. Also, everyone loves to see their team win. So yeah, I think that what I was saying originally is that doesn't bode well for New Zealand, because I'm very positive about the commercial side of things with England, because it's great. It's great for the women's game, and that's going to be good internationally. But if they have a great commercial situation and we continue to have a not so good one, it could be a problem. It'll continue to create a gulf.
Yep. Something we forgot to talk about earlier on, but congratulations to Aaron Smith and his wife Tegan on the birth of Leo, and great to hear that mum and son, mum and baby, are both doing well, as far as we've heard. So that's great to hear. So congratulations on that one. Going so well that Aaron Smith has been called up and is heading up to France. Up to the UK, up to Ireland. Not the UK at all. Jeez. I'll get myself shot. Up to the up to Ireland to play to cover, because Brad Webber has had a concussion and is out of contention, I believe. So he's ahead of his injury cover. Look, he's not played rugby since about round 3 of the NPC. where I think he might have had an injury of some sort in that one. So I can't see him playing unless there's another injury. But you've got to have a backup. You've got to have 3 scrum halves in case other one falls over. Boa.
Yeah, look. To be frank, I won't be surprised if he starts off the bench because yes, it's a bit of injury cover, but high performance and particularly our marquee players are monitored quite heavily, particularly with their off-field training regime. So he'll be ready. There's no question about it. He would have met the fitness criteria. He would have done a couple of Broncos prior to leaving. So the thumbs up would have come from coaching staff. And of course, this shows how serious the All Blacks are, particularly Ian Foster, because anything but a good win won't be enough to pacify some of the naysayers of what the Foster fan club, so to speak. And of course, it'll be a good game because Ireland, it's a test match. It's a proper test match, and Ireland in Dublin are a very difficult and tough proposition. So, I think it's a great sign, and he might show his hand. Without getting ahead of ourselves, maybe a week from this Saturday against France, which is probably what the All Blacks are planning for.
Dear Prudence, Ireland's not a team to get complacent about. Absolutely, it's not. You're quite right. And they had a fantastic, cracking game last weekend against Japan as well. So look, they've had a good run out. They've got some. They're a good side, and not to be complacent. But let's be clear here. The New Zealand public will not accept another loss from the All Blacks this year. Ian Foster's had his 1 loss he's allowed, which was against the Springboks. And the New Zealand public fully expect him to win against Ireland and France. And anything less than that, we'll see people calling for his head. No, not literally, obviously figuratively, as in getting sacked. Even if he wins these 2 games, people are still not going to be happy and fully convinced with him as a head coach. But they are slowly having to give him some begrudging respect for how he's brought through some players on that one.
No, Paul. Look, there is. I can assure you, there is no complacency. There won't be any complacency. This game and the next, without getting ahead of anyone, they're taking this very, very seriously. I think the All Blacks will run on their best side, no question, and they will want to really make a statement. So there's no complacency. The extreme end of this is, don't be surprised if the All Blacks put on a sterling performance. And we know that the All Blacks, when they run their top side, they don't have 2 average games back to back. The historical statistical pattern clearly shows that. So based on that, I think we can look forward to it. And again, look, the naysayers, the Ian Foster fan club, will not accept an accidental win over Ireland. They have to turn up the goods. And if you recall, the last time the All Blacks met Ireland, which was in the World Cup quarterfinal, we all remember what happened. And that is the level of expectation or the weight of expectation on Foster's shoulders. So there'll be a lot of pressure. He will run his best possible side, and I am expecting a good, very good competitive test. But All Blacks to come out with the goods.
Yeah, look, this was definitely an experimental team. I said there'll be something like 17 changes. There were something like that. We are going to see the Welsh team 23 run out again. It's going to be a complete change. The only exception might be that Sam Cane might get included somewhere. Otherwise, this to me it's the same 23 that played against Wales, barring injury. Obviously, I think because obviously Brad Webber's got a concussion, so he obviously needs to be replaced. It will be these games. These next 2 games are going to be taken exceptionally seriously. Don't worry about that one. LB asked in the chat, he said, are the top 10 women's teams professional? So if we look at the top women's rankings, it goes England, New Zealand, Canada, France, Australia, USA, Italy, Ireland, Scotland, and Spain. the top 10. So Wales, for example, South Africa are not in the top 10 teams in the world. Look, England, yes, they're professional. France, yes, they're professional. All those other teams, no, they're not. Put bluntly. So no, there is nowhere near the top 10. The Black Ferns are not full-time professionals. We had Chelsea Alley come out and say she has got 5 jobs, and she is a starting Black Fern in the 15s code, right? First choice one. So so look, guys, no, it's got a long way to go yet on that one. Lastly, then, Bunnings NPC. This coming weekend, I've not really sort of run through last weekend's games, but this, I think we end up with kind of what we expected. So Manawatu hosting Otago on Friday night. That's the 7 o'clock game in the championship. And the other championship game is clearly Taranaki versus Southland at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Boa, I'll be very surprised if we don't see Manawatu and Taranaki coming through those 2 games and meeting in the final. Yep.
Well, I'm actually going to go for the Otago and Taranaki double.
Oh, there we go. Manawatu have been having a decent season, finishing with 4 wins and 4 losses. Otago 3 wins and 4 losses. So I guess, similar records there with that one. So we'll see. But Otago were minus 26 points, Manawatu up 10 over their games. So we'll see. I think Manawatu. All right, so that's how I see that one panning out. But we'll see who gets it right, the Oracle Boa or the guesstimate Paul. Moving on then to the Premiership side of things, and our 2 games there in that one. Hawke's Bay versus Tasman at 4:35 down in Napier. Now look, Hawke's Bay have been the pick of the Premiership, so it's hard to look past them. But both sides have, because we're running so late in the season and players have had overseas contracts, both sides will be missing players on this one. But Hawke's Bay, look, they've continued their record, only losing to Taranaki in their opening game of the season. So so even with those players lost, they've done very well. And then the second game sees Waikato versus Canterbury. Whoa, that's a cracker. In Rotorua at 7 o'clock. During the regular season, when they met, the score in that one was 19-20, with Canterbury coming out 1 point ahead. Look, this one is going to be a close one. It's going to be a score either way, but I think Canterbury probably come in with slightly better form into this game.
No question. The double there, Hawke's Bay and Canterbury. So the quadrilla of Otago, Taranaki, Canterbury, and Hawke's Bay. I think, you're right. Hawke's Bay, for me, has been the one form team. They've played so consistently with their attack patterns. Taranaki, obviously, other side, they're very adventurous. They like to throw the ball out wide. Very good throwing passes in front of the man running on, and that's what has led to the most line breaks in this season as well. So, one of the closer games is probably going to be the Waikato versus Canterbury. But I like what I'm seeing from this Canterbury side. I think they have ironed out some of their misfires, and they're a lot better from a tactical point of view. And we know what Canterbury sides once they get their mojo back. So, I'm sticking with those 2 teams, and let's go for that quadrilla. And best of luck to everybody.
Quadrilla. That sounds like Godzilla, some sort of Japanese disaster movie going on there. So
four together, yeah.
So 2 small unions where we're backing to be hosting the final over in the Naki and down there in the Bay, and we can call them the Bay after they beat Bay of Plenty earlier this year. So that's where we're backing those 2. I'm not sure when's the last time that we had 2 finals in small both in small. Will be interesting to figure that one out. Actually, with Tasman hosting, it probably isn't that long ago, to be honest, because Tasman's not exactly a big province either. So so it's not probably as long ago as I'd like to think. But there we go. So two of the smaller provinces, which will be good nights for those two. A real big shame that the Naki doesn't really have a proper stadium at the moment due to earthquake issues. Yeah, shame on that one. Thank you very much for joining me, Bella. Thank you everyone for joining us in the live chat. Look, I say I've been a bit off and not been on as frequently over this last week, but looking forward to getting back on this weekend with some post-match reactions. And Boa has got a little word to have with us.
Well, if you followed my tips last week, on the money again, Scotland, the Bravehearts, they upset the Wallabies. Again, Statsman and the Statspert pattern strikes. So again, this week, I'm going to give you a little gem. I'm going to go with Scotland again. I really like their form line. I love what they're seeing. And of course, for me, the highlight of the week was Finn Russell, the talisman for the Scots, sorting out the water boy from the Wallabies, running onto the field and trying to make a nuisance. Now, I don't condone what he did. He actually shoved him. But I think that sent a real clear message, because this is starting to become a real nuisance. Some of these, if we actually put a GPS on some of these physios and water boys, they would be having more run meters on the field than some of the players themselves. So I think this sends a really clear message. So this week we'll go, I think, Scotland again. And I have a sneaky little feeling Finn Russell will have a say probably in the last few minutes, kicking a penalty to win them the game. So the quadra plus Scotland, that's 5. All the best, everyone, and enjoy the games.
Scotland against South Africa there. Look, see, what I would do is I would say no water boys allowed on the pitch except for after tries, right? And that way, yes, physios obviously have to be allowed on the pitch, but some water boys, I don't see why they need to go on the pitch outside of after tries. We didn't used to. I mean, players used to be able to play a full 40 minutes without a drink. I can't see. I don't think that. Obviously, if you're in hot weather protocols, fine. But in the UK or in Ireland or France in November, you don't need to be having a drink every 2 minutes. So no water boys except for when there is a try would be how I would sort that one out, to be honest.
I agree.
Thank you, Boa. Thank you, Con, who joined us earlier. All have a cracking time, and I'll see you all next week at 8 p.m. on Tuesday.